Welcome to our very first Lunch and Learn session. Thank you all for being here. This session is part of a three-part mini-series designed to build community amongst the estate planning attorneys in advance of the upcoming Heckerling Institute in Orlando, Florida in January. My name is Brittany Hernandez, and I will be facilitating this series. I'm a lawyer, a Gavel expert, and professional no-code, low-code developer, a legal tech educator, and the global ambassador to law schools for Gavel. I'd like to take a moment to thank Dorna Moini and Gavel for hosting this series. Today, Tracy Troyer, lawyer and owner at Troyer & Good, an estate planning firm based in Indiana, will discuss the topic, how I automated my estate planning practice with Gavel. Feel free to post your questions in the chat as you think of them, and Tracy will pick them up once she concludes. After questions, I'll share some announcements and do a quick wrap up, after which you're free to stay on the call for an optional 5 minutes of speed networking, where I'll invite a few people to introduce themselves for about 1 minute each. You can let me know in the chat if you'd like to introduce yourself during that portion of the call. I'd now like to introduce today's speaker. Tracy is an accomplished attorney with 3 decades of experience in the practice of law. A graduate of Indiana University School of Law, Tracy is highly regarded in her field and has been awarded a Martindale-Hubbell AV rating based on the input of her peers and the judiciary. As the owner of her own firm, she and another attorney provide boutique legal services for individuals and families in the areas of estate planning, probate and trust administration, and elder law. In addition to her professional achievements, Tracy contributes to her local community of Fort Wayne through her involvement in nonprofit boards and her ongoing dedication to pro bono work, including court guardianships for those with limited financial means, Habitat for Humanity, Early Childhood Alliance, and the Leave a Legacy Project. She's also past president and longtime member of the Fort Wayne Estate Planning Council. Thank you so much for being with us today, Tracy. The floor is now yours if you want to share your screen.
Thanks, Brittany. I appreciate the introduction. That was very nice. I'm going to share my screen. Preventing me from doing that because you're sharing your screen.
Give me 1 second.
So just to, kind of go through again who I am. I'm back to share my screen here. Okay. Great. Okay, move that out of the way. So I have been practicing in the United States for about 30 years. And so I've gone through a lot of transitions in terms of technology, lack of technology in the legal field. I do a lot of very heavy document preparation, obviously, with estate planning and estate administration. So documents are very important to us. And we had a situation where a very talented paralegal, she actually started with us when she was 17 years old, and we're a small firm, 2 attorneys plus a support staff. And our paralegal, she was wonderful. She set up social media for us. She did a lot of automation with the previous software that we used. But after about 10 years, she decided to move on to a larger law firm. And when she did that, she took all that information that was in her mind out the door. So that was a nice wake-up call to say, you know what, we need to get systems in place. We need to get templates and automations in place that really can be completed by any legal assistant or paralegal that we have without losing 10 years of knowledge in 1 minute. So the automation software we were using before was really clunky, difficult to use. So that's when we started researching and came across Documate, at the time, now Gavel, and realized that it was definitely the solution for what we wanted to do. So this is our Gavel page and in our Gavel account, and these are our list of workflows. I'm going to talk about this as if it's someone who's not worked in Gavel before, just to kind of show how great it is. So we have a lot of workflows in here. One thing we have is a portal. This I'm sure you can get much more elaborate with these. Oops, excuse me, I'm used to editing.
We can't see your screen actually. If you want to try sharing it one more time.
Oh, it's not sharing. Okay. Oh, there we go. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, good. All right. So, what we are building, and we have the great foundation started, but we're always adding on to this. We're building a system in Gavel where we can get as much information and as much input from the client as possible, so that the staff doesn't have to keep re-entering information over and over, the same information. Okay, so when we have a new client and they schedule an appointment, we send an email confirmation, and in the email confirmation, we send a link. So our client intake questionnaires where we start as far as the client's concerned. So we copy the link to that workflow, and it's included in that confirmation email after somebody schedules an appointment, and we ask them to complete it. And that is really important to our process. So if a client didn't do it or wasn't able to do it for whatever reason, then this is a portal for our staff, and they can just jump really easily to one of the workflows if they need to, jump into creating a fresh or a new workflow. So if they wanted to do the client intake questionnaire, they could just select it. And then this is what our clients see. So this is our intake questionnaire that's client facing. So we're able to put our logo here, which is great. And then these are our 3 practice areas that we currently have active. So I'm just going to go through an estate planning workflow. We also have trust, probate administration, elder law, Medicaid. And depending on which of these appear, we have logic built into the questionnaire to flow to different pages and different questions that are specific to the practice area. So we ask questions that are important to us, that we would like to know about. And then here is where the client can enter, their name, middle initial, all the, date of birth, all of those details. And I will show you a workflow that started here. Okay. So this would be as if a client were taking this questionnaire, and it's skipped over. Well, no, this one's already filled. So let me get to this one. So we can just, I'm going to just do an autofill here so that we can, I can show you how it generally is set up. We're just getting all those basic details from the client, and then they just continue through with answering our questions. So this just keeps going through, asking basic information. And what we do with this information is we push it through to the rest of our workflows that we might need to complete for this client. So for example, this is our, well, let me show you this first, because I think this is one of the cooler features of Gavel. So this is a repeating question. So I'll just go back to it. This is the review page that if you're taking a questionnaire, you get to the end of it. So a client, for example, can complete our intake questionnaire and then go through and review their answers, make sure everything's correct. And if they need to make changes, they can jump back to the questions, which is really nice. So I'll show you the repeating question we have for family members and heirs. get back there. So, so these are great because the client then can just go ahead and put in as many names as they need to. I'm just going to autofill this. And so, we put one child in, then you can add another. So you can add as many children as you need to. You can, you can set up repeater questions for all kinds of things. Tell us about your financial accounts, and then they can list multiple financial accounts, or tell us about your real estate, multiple pieces of real estate. So this one's just an example of, for our estate planning questionnaire, we need these bits of information for the heirs that are going to appear in a will, appear in a trust, powers of attorney, that type of thing. So then what happens with the client intake information, the data then gets pushed into our practice area workflows. So the one I'm looking at right now, this is how we can create powers of attorney and healthcare directives. And this one is set up to be able to be finalized by the least experienced employee in our firm. And that to me is what I'm always looking for, is to get things simplified to a point where you don't have to officially be a paralegal, or you don't officially have to have 12 years of experience in estate planning, because I do have those people and I want their time to be spent on, more complicated, complex things versus data entry. So no one had to type that. That just got pushed in from the client intake questionnaire, the client's information that she put. We're still going to proofread it to make sure, she capitalized things and all of that. So all of that looks good. So this is, all of this was just automatically pulled in, which I think is incredible. So here's the repeater question. I only entered 2 heirs, but you could have more, obviously. So this is showing the different information for the different heirs. Okay. So again, this one isn't client facing. This is for our staff. So when they get to this page, all the client specific information has been filled in, but now on this page in the questionnaire, they're going to select which document we're going to prepare for the client. So we're just going to do power of attorney for this client, and we're going to say she has one primary attorney in fact she'd like to name. And then the heirs' names are already here. So we've set this up so that those automatically show as potential answers. So again, that name doesn't have to be typed again. It's already here. So we would do a selection for the primary power of attorney. Then we can do a successor. However many successors you want to set it up for. And this is kind of going back and forth because I had it mostly completed. So that's why I'm going back and forth between the review page and this page. So successor, again, the names are already appearing and we just select. So again, this is very simple we have a remote paralegal who actually doesn't have estate planning experience, but she's able to do this because we tell her this is the document we want. This is, who we want as primary. And she just makes the selections and makes sure everything looks good. And we actually have 4 output documents attached to this particular workflow, but with the conditional output documents, we were able to tell it, okay, we wanted to prepare a power of attorney for Margaret. We always have a signing receipt. So the other 3 output documents that are attached to this workflow don't appear because we didn't say we were preparing those. So that's pretty cool that you don't have to fish through a bunch of things once you're done. So then this is our signing receipt. And basically when this is opened up, the staff member just needs to make sure everything looks good. I mean, she doesn't even have to touch this. So we've got the signing date, we've got the client's information here, we've got what documents we're going to have her sign. We've got who's going to be with her when she's signing and her name here, because we get our clients to sign this as a receipt that they're taking the original documents. So that would just get saved to the file. And then this is the power of attorney document that was generated by that workflow. So here we have Margaret's power of attorney. So the client name appeared there with the document tagger. We're able to tell it to be all caps, or if we didn't want it all caps, we could do it any way that we wanted to. Primary power of attorney is the name we selected, and then the successor power of attorney for my glitch didn't come in there for some reason, probably because I went back and forth so much. But anyway, that. And then we've got the signing dates here. We've got the client's name, the notary name, all that's just automatically appearing, her last four of her social. So all that just automates in, and then we are able to review it and print it and have the client sign it. So that's my overview, Brittany. Are there any things you want me to talk about or touch on?
That's amazing. Thank you so much for being willing to share behind the scenes. I think what's helpful for me is that I concoct these different scenarios in my head of how I might have like this link get actually sent to the client. When did they see it? At what stage? Why at that stage? And so on. So I think that it's really validating to hear like, okay, this makes sense to other people as well. But I was going to ask quickly because, I think that it kind of depends on strategy. So for example, you kind of mentioned that you do a lot of things behind the scenes rather than having a lot of the client do much of that work. So you're going to be pushing the information from the client intake form into other documents like the power of attorney, and then just answering any additional questions kind of for them. But have you also, or have you considered at all the approach of having the client create an account in, on your subdomain as a user, and then having them fill out the information so that they have that data persistence that they can benefit from if they needed to, or if you were going to do any productization in the future, having these be individual units that you can sell versus using it all internally?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are in the discussion stage of doing, productizing, if that's the word, some documents. We used to do quite a bit of guardianship work, but it just was getting really time consuming, and I don't know, we're just super busy in my part of Indiana. All the estate planners here are just, our schedules are maxed out. So we actually had to drop guardianships from our practice as a practice area. So one of the things we've been talking about doing is putting a workflow on our website that, in the scenario that for me is perfect, would be parents who have a child who's disabled, turns 18, needs a guardianship. So that is not going to be contested. Typically, it's just going through the formality of the documents, filing the court hearing, and getting the guardianship in place. So for us, that's the one we're looking at trying. And so to do that, it would be what you're describing, Brittany, and then the clients could actually complete it all themselves and print the documents, and we would give them instructions on how to file with the court. So we're excited about that possibility.
That's exciting. Yeah. And I think what you've pinpointed here in that kind of discussion is the fact that you really want to focus on solving one very specific problem at a time as you're trying to build out your suite of different products and things that you can have.
I have learned that. I've learned to take off smaller bites at a time.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Bites all at once. That does help.
Exactly. Yes, and I want to leave room for other people to ask questions as well, but I just wanted to cover just a few quick things. They did have a passcode page or question. Do you mind going into, was that, or did I just see that? Did you have one that said passcode or no?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that is.
What's that one?
That is, okay, so once the client fills out the intake questionnaire, that gets emailed to one of my assistants. And then she goes into Data Manager, finds the workflow, opens it, and then she puts in some of our internal office information. So the file number and who the attorney on the matter is, a couple of things like that, confirming they've chosen the right practice area for the workflow. So the client can't see those pages because I made those pages contingent on that passcode being correct. So because the client wouldn't know what it is, those pages are hidden to the client.
Excellent. I love that so much. As I mentioned, if anyone has questions, you can pop them in the chat and then I'll take a look at them as well and highlight you. But I did want to know, since you mentioned in that client intake flow that one of the practice areas is elder law. And, you know, I don't want us to come off as sounding ageist at all, but just that there is a range of tech savviness and the ability to get access to different, you know, from a range not only in ability to understand and use technology, but also maybe accessing technology. So have you run into any scenarios where you've had to maybe help a client kind of go through this process together, or has that not really come as an issue?
You'd be surprised how many older people are pretty tech savvy. You know, and yeah, you know, it's pretty easy to fill out the questionnaire if they have email and they can click on a link, you know, they can do it. So there's really nothing too complicated about it as long as they have email.
Makes sense.
If someone doesn't fill it out, whether they just didn't have time or whatever the case may be, then they come in and meet with us, and then one of my staff members completes it themselves.
I see. And then the last question for me, and we can have anyone else who wants to ask. You mentioned, so you have those great instructions because as you mentioned, you're having this be from the perspective of maybe the client fills out the first part, but when you push the information into a power of attorney to populate those 4 documents or 2 documents, depending on the different conditions you've set, you have saved an SB file. What is that referring to? Or is that
that's our shorthand we use for our practice management system. We use Smokeball. So that's what that stands for.
I see. Okay, perfect.
So that's the matter is in that platform. So we're, you know, saving our files to that platform.
Okay. And I know with Clio, you can set it up to where it gets automatically added. Did you figure out an integration or figure out a kind of a zap that makes it go straight into it?
Not yet, but I know I'm not sure if I need to use a webhook for that. I haven't quite figured that out to get the documents automatically. And Smokeball is very new to Zapier. So they don't have all the functions available yet, but they have some.
I know Jack's on the call. He's really good at this kind of stuff. Hi, Jack.
Hi, I was just gonna say real quick, for Clio, like I found that trying to push it through like Zapier webhook, whatever, didn't work as well. So all I do is for matters that I want documents to go into Clio because I asked a Clio question like earlier in the interview, then and so this might not work depending on how you push your things because you can't have a Clio question without being a signed in user. So like you'd have to do your intake, and then when you push into your own, then you select what Clio matter. But then you can email the documents to the matter in Clio. And that's the most reliable way to get there because then you can get all the Word documents, all the PDFs, and they all get sent, but they're not zipped because Clio doesn't have a way of unzipping them on its server. So if I don't get them as individual documents, I can't get them, but Zapier can only push 1 document at a time. So Zapier will try to be like, oh, I need to zip them, or I'll take like the bundle of zip files from Gavel and then put it there. And that didn't work for us, but just having to email it to Clio works out perfect. Although it kind of makes some of our matter logs look a little goofy because you have the like, you've received the documents email or whatever, but it works fine and everybody knows where to look now.
Yeah, email works well for us too. When in Outlook, that's what we use for email. If we, you know, my assistant will receive an email with documents attached from Gavel, and then she just selects the matter the email connects to, and then it automatically pulls the documents in. through the email.
Oh, okay.
And it saves them as separate files. So it's very streamlined.
Okay. Well, what Clio does is you can actually, each matter in your Clio has its own email address. So you can actually email the documents to the matter. And so emails in the background, Clio receives the documents and automatically puts them in the cloud storage. Somebody doesn't have to do a filing. So that's something that Clio has, at least.
Yeah. Interesting.
No, that's super helpful. And it's helpful to have the perspective of different people who have tried different systems. And even though we have, Gavel has an integration with Clio, it does help to hear that you're using a different tool and how you make that work with your particular stack. So I love that. And I really appreciate your time here. Unless anyone has any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping us up. So let me go ahead and share my screen again here. And just do a few announcements. First, I'd just like to thank Tracy for sharing her perspective and her insights and her actual, workflows and how they work. So before we wrap up, though, I just want to let you know that this session, as I mentioned, is part of this kind of three-part mini-series designed to build that community in advance of the upcoming HackerLink Institute. We're happy to have anyone join, but specifically, we wanted to let anyone know that we also have 2 more sessions, which will be December 13th and January 3rd. You can also sign up for us to have a dinner together at Zero Urban Italian Kitchen in Orlando on January 10th at 7 p.m. There are limited spots. I only have a table for 12, so you can reach out to me at brittany@gavel.io if you want to reserve your seat. Also, I've created a private channel in Gavel Slack for the community so we can create a space for us to share insights and coordinate meetups before, during, and after the conference. So just reach out to me, DM me, or email me, and I will make sure you get added to that. And then finally, if you're new to Gavel and you'd like to try out automating aspects of your own practice, then you can get a free 7-day trial plus $100 off for your first 2 months. And then just after starting your free trial, you just need to email help@gavel.io with the code HackerLink2024, and a member of the team will apply that discount for you. And this is good until 11:59 p.m. on January 12th. So that concludes the main portion of our talk. So thank you so much to Tracy for sharing your insights. Just again, we're going to be transitioning into an optional 5 minutes of speed networking. So feel free to go if you need to, but if you'd like to stay on the call, we're going to just stay on and chat a little bit. So if you need to go, go ahead. And thank you so much for coming. So I'm going to stop the recording here.